and welcome to Trinity Church and our Bible in a Year podcast. I am Pastor Mike, and today I'm excited to have, for the first time on our podcast, Trinity's cafe manager and hospitality guru, Jill Pratt. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Before we dive in, here's a quick reminder of what we're doing here. So Trinity's theme for the year is alive and active, which comes from Hebrews 4:12, which says that the Word of God is alive and active. It is sharper than a double-edged sword, and it reveals the thoughts and intentions of our hearts. And as a part of that theme, we as a whole church are reading through the entire Bible in 1 year, knowing that being in God's Word each and every day strengthens and sharpens us. It reveals our intentions and helps us draw closer to God and to other people. And we believe that the Bible is so powerful. We believe that it is the inspired Word of God, and we know that Scripture has the power to shape our hearts and transform our relationships with other people. The Bible is like this library of our faith, and despite there being many books with different genres and authors, we see one unified story of God's relationship with humanity that culminates in Jesus Christ. So that's why we're doing this. But we will get into our topic today, which is the book of Lamentations, in just a second. But before we do, I would love for us to get to know Jill a little bit better. So, Jill, glad you're here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about who's in your family, like husband, kids, pets?
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to brag or anything, but I think I have a pretty amazing family.
Yeah.
Been married for 31 years, and we have 3 grown daughters, and they're all out adulting and making it very well and doing very well. 2 of them are married. I have 1 grandson.
I got to meet your grandbaby the other day.
Yes.
He's so cute.
He is my heart. He is my heart. And we have another one on the way in December. So I'm going to have to share that love, but I think I can give it a shot and try it. We live on an acreage in Elmwood, and we have some animals, dog, cats, and my favorite of all time is chickens. And anybody who knows me knows chickens are my heart pets.
But you like them as a pet and not just to like get eggs or anything like that?
Well, we have them for eggs, and we told ourselves we're going to save so much money. You won't save any money with pet chickens.
Yeah.
But they're really awesome. I love to just sit out in their chicken yard and watch them, and I have a chicken who hops up on my lap and sits with me, and so they're very close to my heart.
I don't think I've ever heard of a lap chicken before.
Oh yeah.
I've heard of lap dogs, cats that will cuddle with you, but a lap chicken is pretty unique. So.
Yes, it's awesome.
Now, you've had a ton of different jobs in your life, from teaching preschool to doing CPR and other health and first responder training, and now working here at church.
Yeah.
And so what's been some of your favorite things you've done for work, or the weirdest things you've done for work?
I don't think I really have a super weird thing that I've ever done for work, but I have had lots of jobs in childcare type areas in the Papillion La Vista School District and some other childcare centers. I worked for Child Saving Institute for a little bit, and I did own my own center with about 100 kids, and that's probably one of my favorite jobs that I ever had. I just love kids. They're innocent, they're pure, and they are just soaking in all the goodness that they can.
Yeah. Well, with daughters that are currently that age of kids that you would have been watching, I know that it's a very precious age. So
it is.
It's fun.
Yeah.
So in a second, we're going to talk about Lamentations, which, as it sounds, is kind of a downer. So to balance that out, before we get there, where would you consider your happy place here on earth? Do you have any favorite spots?
I do, and it's my front porch.
Your front porch?
Yes.
With the chicken?
It is. My chickens will come around and hang out with me a little bit. Plus, I have cats and some little kitties right now, so they will come and sit on my lap. And the dog, and the neighbor's dog is over there sometimes. It's a place where I go, my family calls it PT, which is porch time, but it's still some time for self-care to go out there. 99% of the time, I'm out there by myself. That is time when I go out and read my Bible, and we have a huge front yard, and everything is just so beautiful, and I can just close my eyes when there's a slight breeze coming through. It's just perfect for me. So if ever I'm sad or I just need some care for myself, I go and sit in my rocking chair. Once in a while, some family will come and sit in the other rocking chair. There's two, so anybody's welcome to come hang out with me at any time.
All right, now I'm just imagining you and Phil just rocking back and forth, like
We do
watching
sometimes.
watching the wildlife, and
Yeah, we do.
that's great. Well, I love it. So, well, like I said, today we were talking about Lamentations, and it's one of the most sad and unique books in the Old Testament. That you wouldn't expect a book in which people are crying out almost against God in some ways to be included in the Bible. And it's an interesting book that contains 5 poems from, frankly, an anonymous author who, at least we know, survived Babylon's siege of Jerusalem. And it's kind of reflecting on the fallout, and the themes of the book are grief, loss, and resilience. And really the reality of the human condition, which is what do we do and what's our relationship with God when bad stuff happens to us.
Right.
So some background that we've talked about before, but it's always good to remind ourselves that the invasion of Jerusalem by the Babylonians was one of the worst catastrophes in Israel's history up to this point. That Jerusalem was the capital of the land that God had promised to Abraham 1,500 years prior to this. And for nearly 500 years before this incident happened, it was the center of Jewish political and religious significance. Jerusalem was the city where kings from the line of David lived, where Solomon built the temple in honor of Yahweh, and where the priests maintained the rituals of Israel's worship. But after all that, in the summer of 587 BC, the city eventually fell to Babylon, and everything was lost, and the temple was destroyed. And so Lamentations is this raw accounting of the pain and confusion that the Israelites felt following that destruction. So Lamentations is composed of 5 poems, 4 of which follow what is called an acrostic style. And so, Jill, for those unfamiliar with that term, do you want to let people know what an acrostic poem is?
Yeah, and I didn't know this before about Lamentations, but it's pretty interesting. Poems 1, 2, and 4. An acrostic style poem is taking the first letter of each line and making a word or phrase out of it vertically.
Yeah.
So with Lamentations, they do that using the Hebrew alphabet. So there's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, so there's 22 lines in poems 1, 2, and 4. In poem number 3, it's a little bit different, but kind of along the same lines. They have 3 lines for every letter, so that makes 66 verses, which makes this the longest poem.
Yeah, absolutely. And so poem 5 is the weird one that kind of breaks the pattern. So it still has 22 verses like poems 1, 2, and 4, but it's a little chaotic in style and doesn't follow the structured acrostic style. Like it doesn't start with a specific letter of the alphabet. And some scholars have theorized that this is intentional to signify how disordered the world has become after the exile. But honestly, even as a pastor, I have no idea. The author's intentions are above my pay grade, and so, some people see meaning in that, others don't. Whatever you think is fine.
Right. It's just very interesting.
It just is interesting to note. And so, especially since as we translate the Bible from Hebrew and Greek into English, some of those nuances that would have made sense to the original readers kind of get lost on us. And so we've certainly read poems in English where like the side spells a word or starts A, B, C, D, and Lamentations is doing the same thing. So, but that's enough about the kind of like meta discussion around the poems. And so, Jill, do you mind summarizing what is in the poems?
Yeah, well, starting in poem number 1, it's a description of Jerusalem after it's fallen. Yeah. So they refer to Jerusalem as Lady Zion, which is a personification of Jerusalem. And with this much deep grief and sorrow, it's oftentimes very difficult to put into words those feelings, because a lot of times those feelings are so deep that there's nothing that can describe it. But they do a really good job with what they can, with some phrases like stripped of all her beauty, no one to comfort her, there's no place to rest, they're living among foreign nations. And even with all this, they know that they brought this on themselves. It's
Yeah.
not like they didn't have warning, but they brought this on themselves. And they say defiled herself, and the sins were woven into the ropes that bind them. So it's very descriptive, talking about Jerusalem and the people as a whole and the destruction that they're having to live with.
Yeah, and it's a weird sense, like, normally as humans, like, we don't like taking responsibility for our
Yeah.
actions.
Yep.
But it seems like the author of Lamentations is fully ready to accept responsibility of, like, yeah, we screwed up, and this is God, you know, in the middle of it. So,
They recognize it.
Yeah.
And they understand why. In poem 2, it's a continuation of the description of all of the destruction, but then we kind of take a God focus on it and what God is actually doing. And it kind of individualizes God and puts, although the Babylonians were the ones carrying out the actual destruction, it's God who is orchestrating it and letting all of this happen. So it kind of comes from that perspective, but they are still talking about children in the streets starving and,
Yeah, it's so
and
sad.
things like that. They also, something I found very interesting is when they were talking about God doing these certain destructions, it says in there that he made careful plans to do so. So this isn't just a reaction to of anger. He made careful plans to do so. This is kind of like a bigger grand scheme plan that God is doing. He also stops giving prophetic visions, and so all of this kind of chaos is coming together.
yeah, and it's easy to kind of mistake this as something that is really sudden. And yet, you guys know that if you guys have been reading along, that this is hundreds of years of buildup, particularly when we were reading 2 Kings, where stuff really starts to fall apart. And you have hundreds of years of bad kings leading people away from God and worshiping other idols, and God continually sending his prophets to say, come back to me, like, come follow me. And the people just won't. And so God has a very long leash for the Israelites, and this is just, it's the end of the leash. And so,
Yeah.
which is, it's hard when that discipline comes, but yeah, it's still sad
It makes us recognize.
and make us recognize. And so, yeah, there is a lot of, like, sometimes even violent imagery, like they were under siege and like they were at war, they were being invaded. And Lamentations is really fascinating that it gives us a really vivid image of how hellish war can be, with, you know, children starving in the streets, people being cut down by swords. Like, it's pretty grim. And
Right.
it's something that we in America don't really experience all that much, that we don't have to face the realities of siege warfare. And so these horrors are very foreign to us. So it can be tough to read some of these graphic descriptions of what people are experiencing.
Right.
But also it is something that I feel like all humans can relate to, the anguish that they are
Sure.
feeling in this, because that still exists in our world today. But then we get to poem 3, which is really interesting, that like there is still some of this recognition about the ways that they have gone wrong, but then there's like a little bit of hope squeezed into it, a little bit of recognizing that God is still good. So what's going on in poem number 3?
Well, it still continues talking about some of the destruction, but then the author kind of takes a personal note, and he talks about some things that are happening to him and how he feels. And he's talking on behalf of Lady Zion, so he's talking on behalf of Jerusalem as well. But it gets a little bit more detailed with individual suffering and not Jerusalem as a whole. So that continues on. But like you said, at the end in verses 22 through 24, there is a glimmer of hope. And those verses are, "The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance. Therefore, I will hope in him." So even though they have all this chaos and they're struggling and living through all this, they know they did it to themselves. they are still turning to God. They know that God did this as a punishment, but they're still running back to him. So I see it as them having all of the sins that they did, and they were ignoring it and doing what they wanted to, and then God comes in and says, here's your consequences. And they go, yeah, here's my consequences, but I'm not going to run away from God. I'm going to run to him now. I realize it, so I'm going to get back to where I should have been.
Yeah. And I appreciate that hopefulness. And I think it's one of the ways that this has become scripture, because if it was all just complain, and talking
Right.
about the ugliness, I don't know if it would have resonated with people and been put in the Bible, but it's that tension between saying, man, life is really hard right now. We know the ways in which we've contributed to why life is hard, but God is still faithful and merciful to us even in the middle of it.
Right.
I think is a testament to our ongoing relationship with God. So that brings us to poem number 4. What's going on in there?
In poem number 4, it kind of does a comparison and contrast of how the glory of Jerusalem before and what it's like now. So children used to laugh and play in the streets, and now they are hungry and starving and begging for food. How the wealthy used to eat like crazily,
Yeah.
and they were dressed lavishly, and everything was great, and now they are in the streets, and they are looking in the dirt for food, and they are not dressed like they were before, and they are destroyed as well. It's not just poor people, it was every single person. Their king was captured and dragged away. They don't look like they did before. They're kind of a more emaciated type and dirty and unrecognizable. So it has even some statements about cannibalism.
Yeah.
So being in such desperation that they are resorting to some of this. I mean, it's a definite war zone for sure.
Yeah.
It's a 180 from what Jerusalem was
Yep.
to what it is at this time.
Yeah, and so for those of you guys out there, the verse that she's referencing comes from Lamentations 4:10, which says, "Tender-hearted women have cooked their own children. They have eaten them to survive the siege." And this is something that, like, if it was difficult to comprehend how much suffering is going on, like, that is the desperation that people are feeling. And,
Yeah.
It is, we still talk about, like, the Donner Party and people being so desperate that they would resort to eating people that presumably have already passed, not that they're living, but it still is, like, really gut-wrenching and horrifying to be like, oh man, like, this is what they were going through.
And we can't even begin to imagine that desperation.
Absolutely not. So it's a really awful reality as a whole.
Right.
But then it ends on a little bit different a note. Like, we noted that poem 5 is full of chaos. It's not orderly the same way that the first 4 are, but
Right.
but what's going on in that 5th poem?
Well, the 5th poem is like a communal prayer, and they're searching for restoration. They're searching for the forgiveness. They're searching for God to be with them again. And they acknowledge once again that they were sinful. This is their punishment. This is what they deserve, but they're asking to be restored to what they were before. And they kind of go back and forth a little bit, just like we today, when we are in such sorrow or grief, sometimes we are very extremely hopeful, and then we look around us and see the chaos, and then we kind of lose that focus on God, and then we're back to, why did you do this to me? Are you still angry with me? Those are some of the things that the people were saying, even though that they were searching for forgiveness and restoration and being redeemed. They wanted the damage to be undone. But they did realize that it's not going to get undone. But if they have God walking with them through that whole thing, it's a lot easier to get through that struggle.
Yeah. I think this is so relatable to us as Americans in terms of like probably the emotional roller coaster a lot of us have been on for the past like 5 or 6 years, of just like, you know, having hope and trust in God, and then turning on the news and being like,
Right,
it's all going to hell in a handbasket.
Yep.
And that
And it
kind of
makes you feel so helpless.
and it does, like, you're like, well, what do I even do about all these things that seem to be going wrong,
Right.
in our culture and in our world, and so, you know, I think that we could just as well speak the words of, you know, this fifth poem, which at the very end says, Lord, you remain the same forever, and your throne continues from generation to generation. But why do you continue to forget us? Can you restore us, O Lord, and bring back the joy again? Give us the joys that we once had. Or do you utterly reject us? And are you angry with us still?
Yeah.
Like that sort of like whiplash in emotion, like I think is still incredibly relatable of like, hey God, we know that you're king. We love you. We trust you. But things are tough right now. And we would love for it to go back to the way it used to be. And it's not going back to the way that it used to be. So does that mean that you're like angry or upset with me?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating, and I think part of the reason why Lamentations is in the Bible is because it continues to be relatable,
Right.
Even to today. So I wonder, like I mentioned briefly, you know, trying to connect it to today, and I wonder how we transport these lessons into modern times. And so how do you think we process communal grief today, whether it's around cultural disasters that shake us to the core like 9/11, school shootings, COVID, or the George Floyd protests? Like, I don't know, how does that connect to what we read in Lamentations?
Well, I think there's a couple things that come to my mind. One of those is when we are in grief, grief is one of the hardest emotions to experience. And I've seen several times in my own life with other people that the grief is so much that they don't want to bear it, so it turns to another emotion, and sometimes it turns to anger. And now they're mad at God, and they turn away from God, and then everything is just worse, like the death of a loved one. Why did my child die when this child had the same thing and lived? And then they have questions, and then they have all of that pain that they carry with them. And if they're turning away from God, they're not getting some of that restoration. And sometimes that can last a lifetime. The phrase, time heals all wounds, I don't believe that. My saying is, time does not heal all wounds, Jesus does. So sometimes people can live a whole lifetime with that bitterness and with that hatred and that sorrow, but if they don't seek out Jesus, it's hard for them to be restored. So I deeply believe that time is not going, I mean, it may take some time,
Yeah.
but if you don't have Jesus and God with you, then it's very difficult. Another thing that I think about is when we are going through the grief and sorrow, that when we do go to God, we don't necessarily get that instantaneous, just like they didn't. So, for instance, if someone was living a life of crime, went to jail for 30 years or something like that, and then over some of that time, they went back to God, and now they are restored, and they're redeemed, and they're sharing God with everyone else. That's all great. His life is blessed, but he doesn't get to get out of prison because of it.
Yeah, still face the consequences.
Yes, you still have your consequences, but it's better to walk through those consequences with God than without him. So I think about a couple of those things. Also, with some of those disasters that we have, such as the school shootings, and what was the other one you mentioned? School shootings.
I mean, COVID, 9/11, just any of these
and
kind
9/11. I think that we all see that as bad things that are happening, and it's evil, and we all are against evil. So in those kind of situations, I see us all pulling together with God for a common force of healing and direction of how to go. Some other instances that happen, though, sometimes, like George Floyd, that causes sometimes differences among people, and then we have different sides, so we're fighting with each other. And when we're fighting with each other about viewpoints, we're then necessarily fighting against God. So we still are not getting that restoration. So what we do with some of those circumstances, I don't really know. I know that we can control our own actions and we can model some of those things for other people, but sometimes it's very difficult when people are fighting amongst themselves and not all together as a collective society.
Yeah, and I really appreciated what you said about time not necessarily healing all wounds. That, like, if we do not turn back to God, if we do not, focus on trying to, reach across to the people who disagree with us and heal some of those wounds and anger that we might hold from different viewpoints, like, then things don't get better.
Right.
That we just kind of sit in it. And like, I just love the analogy of, like, if you break a bone and it is so, like, far out of place and it doesn't get reset, like, it heals back wonky. Like,
Right. Yeah.
I have this old, like, football injury that I once, like, broke my pinky and didn't realize that I broke it. And so just, like, never got it treated. And so now it, like, has healed back weird.
Right.
And that can be somewhat of an analogy of, like, to Lamentations, is that I think processing the grief in light of their relationship with God is one of the only ways that they can experience restoration later. That if they would have experienced this and then said, well, God, you abandoned us, you're the worst, I don't know if their relationship would have been restored with God.
Right.
And so, so it's interesting that, like, healing the right way and healing with God is important and not just giving it time.
Right. And I don't feel like you are so far away that you can't come back.
No one's too far away.
So I think of Chris's sermon Sunday, and he talked about two roads, the road to life and the road to destruction. And if we are talking about two roads, they go away from each other
Diverge, yeah.
until we have life and death, and they're opposite of each other. But in that process, if you took the road of destruction and you're farther away, the farther you go down, the farther you are away. But that doesn't mean that you can't cross through all these weeds. It won't be fun and it will be a struggle, but you can get through all of those weeds that are separating them and get back on the path to life. Or you can back up and go around again. It kind of reminds me too of Robert Frost's poem.
Yeah.
Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Yeah. So I think that's also a huge lesson from Lamentations, that you can go back. You're not so far down this wrong path that you can't get back.
I love that. All right, I got one more thing that I want to ask you, because I think so often we are told that being depressed or being angry or sad sometimes is a sign of a lack of faith. Like, sometimes, like, people's impressions of Christians is like they have this veneer of a smile and joy all the time, and that's what it means to be faithful. I'm wondering, do you feel like, since we have this book that is full of lament, that in itself can be a form of faithfulness?
Yes, and I don't think everybody's life is smooth and peachy all the time, and life just happens. There's life circumstances that happen that can make our emotions sad or angry or such grief, but I think those are the things that actually bring us to faith. If we can go through those things and still go to God and not question him and not turn away from him, then that is the faithfulness. So hardships are a way for us to have better connection with him.
I love it. Jill, this has been so wonderful. And
Yay.
you've been a great guest. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank
and I
you.
think it's a good place for us to call it for today. So keep on doing your readings. You guys are doing great. Next time, we'll jump back into more of the prophetic voices with Ezekiel, who's one of our strange prophets as well, right there with Jeremiah. So more fun stuff to talk about later. But until then, may God bless you abundantly, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye now.